Hope here at Crafty Hope, and welcome! I am working once again with the Grafix Art Mixed Media Journal. This is a journal that comes with 2 chipboard pieces and 10 of their films. So 2 of each different kinds. There's a, I'm trying to remember, this is the 0.01 clear Dura-Lar. There is a wet media Dura-Lar. There's the white and the black Dura-Lar, and then there is the matte Dura-Lar. So I'm going to use the 0.01 clear Dura-Lar, the wet media Dura-Lar, and the white Dura-Lar along with the cover to create a fun little cover idea using my laser cutter. So my last video you saw I created some stencils and some other things to do the pages I did in here. And now I want to experiment a little bit more. So I'm going to use the chipboard. The chipboard is a natural chipboard that comes on this. They also have a white one that's white on one side and natural on the other, and a black one that's black all the way through. I'll be playing with some of those later in the year, but for now we're working with this 0.057 natural chipboard. I'm gonna make a spinner on this cover and use some of these. I will probably attach it to this thicker Dura-Lar, and then I'm going to create a pocket here with the white and the clear or wet media to put some little different things in it that we can utilize our spinner with. So that's my idea. That's the general idea. We're gonna get to that. Remember that what I really like about this mixed media journal is the ability to take off your pieces. So you can arrange them in any order that you like. So that's what I'm gonna do now, is remove this. And y'all, I'm gonna go ahead and tell you, I'm a little nervous. I've never done this before. But sometimes, you know, you have to go and try these things to find out if you can do them. So I'm nervous about taking these to the laser cutter and possibly messing this up. But there is no art without experimentation and learning. So the first thing I'm going to cut is this cover. I'm going to see how it does, and then I'm going to cut this wet media and this. But all I'm going to do to these 2 is cut some holes along the edges. So I will start with this, and we'll see. We'll see what happens. So I think that was a pretty thorough explanation of what I'm going to do. If you want to see a shorter version of this, I encourage you to head over to the Grafix YouTube channel and watch there. So once I got all my pages out, I headed to my 80-watt OmTech laser cutter. I did make a frame that's 6x6 to fit all of these pages in, and that way I had the same starting point for all of them. Now I cut the chipboard at a 75 millimeters per second with a power of 35%. I did do the run twice because the first time it wasn't very loose. So to make sure it popped out just like that, I ran it twice. Then I did the white Dura-Bright, and you can see I'm cutting the holes down the side of that. That had a speed of 300 and a power of 25 to 30%. So once that's cut, it comes out of that same frame really easy. I've got a magnet there holding it in place so it didn't move about. And this the wet media Dura-Lar, that's super thin. It's going to be kind of hard to see, but I also did 300 millimeters a second with the power of 20 to 25%. And yeah, that one's pretty tough to see. So once I got all of those cut, I went and gessoed my pieces of chipboard. That, unfortunately, my camera acted up and stole that footage. But yeah, I just used some Liquitex white gesso to cover those pieces, and you know, I really didn't need to cover the spinner, and you'll see why later. And then I wanted to make this cover feel very much like me, so I am starting with some collage. As y'all know, I start almost all of my any kind of mixed media project with collage. It kind of gets me a jump into the project. It gets, what did I say the other day, that it's like me revving up my creative engine to jump into it. So I'm using what is that stuff? Fluid matte medium on the gesso, and this just is giving, the gesso there helped me make sure that it's a primer, and it helps me make sure that when I put down that fluid medium, it's not soaking straight into the chipboard, because the chipboard, of course, is very absorbent, and so this kind of gives me a better surface to work on for all of this, as well as a nice, I don't know, white layer. I don't know. I like the chipboard color too, but I wanted to see how the chipboard took some gesso. It's all very new working with these products, and I'm getting to do it and show y'all so that you can, enjoy them as well. So I put a couple different pieces of paper down, and then I saw I had some of it's the hardware joint tape that's got like the holes on it. It's self-adhesive, and it makes for a really neat texture. So I put down a few little snippets of that. I'm working out of my paper scrap stash, and so whatever's in there, I'm laying down. There's some tissue paper. That's the inside of a security envelope. There's antique. That music paper there is actually over 100 years old and just falling to pieces. So a bit of old, bit of new. It's how I like to work. And I was kind of avoiding that left side there because I didn't know how I would be able to cut those edges back out, and so I was like, you know what, I'm going to do that. Oh, and I do want to mention that if you don't have a laser cutter, this is just chipboard. You can go and get a craft knife or some other kind of cutter and create these shapes yourself. I'm using the laser cutter because it is one of the tools I have at hand, so I say use what you've got. If you don't have a laser cutter, well, then don't worry about it. Use your craft knife. All right, so this color has been my go-to lately. It is an Americana craft paint. The color is Sea Glass, and I love it. So I'm putting it down in just a couple spots, and what I'm going to do is dip my paintbrush into some water there and wet it and use that to kind of smear it so that the paint still kind of moves around, but it's more of a wash, especially over some of those papers that I just put down. And I'm going to blot up just a little bit of that water before I go and try it. You can see there that the chipboard is bowing a little from the water and stuff I've put on it. It's fine. It's okay. Now I added a little bit of this Distress crayon. I think it's peacock feathers, just in a couple areas to get a difference of color, but I ended up watering it down so much that you'll never really see this, but I'm including it here because it's not something I think I showed in the shortened version over on the Grafix channel. Yeah, so you can see that kind of blends just right in. I like my blues, y'all. It's my go-to. Can't help it. All right, so I am looking at that, trying to decide what is going to come next, and yep, I'm going to dry it. I've added all that water and all that paint to it, and I wanted to darken up a little, so I have this. It's a bingo dauber from the Dollar Tree. Mine is actually just marked as a marker. It doesn't say bingo marker or whatever the others say. I don't know that it makes a difference. It's a bingo dauber. So I held it upside down for just a second to make sure some of the liquid kind of soaked into that dauber, and then slammed it as much as I could onto there because I like the splatter that comes out from it. So, and it bleeds beautifully. This one, it's funny, I have gotten so many different colors out of this. It's like a Payne's gray almost. I get like a blue, sometimes there's a little bit of a teal color in there. It just, yeah, it's fun to play with, to wet it, to move it a little bit. And I am putting a bunch of water on my paintbrush and letting it drip down the front of that for additional texture. And I really loved that. I was like, I am so glad I did that. So I am picking up a little bit more of that black ink that's on there and splattering it around. And then, of course, I'm going to dry this so I can get everything kind of just stop doing what it's doing. From there, I decided to add a gold stencil. This gold paint is some old, just gold craft paint, but I love it. And the stencil is one that I created using some of the graphic stencil material, and I used the same settings as I did in my last graphics video, but I'll go ahead and tell you it's the same as I used on the What Media Dura-Lar, which is 300 millimeters per second for the speed and a power of 20 to 25%. So, and this is just like a sunburst or starburst or whatever, it's kind of like rays of light coming out. I did try taping it down with the masking tape. It didn't really do anything. Holding it in place was the best thing I did. And I'm using a cosmetic sponge there to do the stencil. You can see I'm going ahead pulling off that tape. So I did design both the stencils and my chipboard cutouts in a program called Lightburn. I'm pretty sure it's a free program. I cannot guarantee that. I know it's a program that we use for the laser cutter. It's pretty... If you've worked with some of the other SVG file type programs, you'll have a fairly good idea of how to use it. But I designed this in it and cut it out on the laser cutter. So at first I was just going to do the rays at the top, but then I decided to turn this and put it on the bottom. And once I put it on the bottom, I was like, well, what about the sides? So here's me turning it, and I was like, I don't know, it may look weird. Let me look at it. Maybe just the top and the bottom. Now, in this, I end up deciding to go ahead and go for it on the sides as well. And this gold, it doesn't make a huge statement because it's definitely one of those things that you don't really see it unless the light hits it. But y'all, it makes me so happy. I love that touch of gold with the black and that sea glass color. Oh, love it. So I decided to turn then to my spinner, and I thought I was, I knew I wanted to paint the head of it, the triangular portion of it. I wanted to paint it gold, so I'm going to start by just painting the stem of it, I guess. I'm not sure quite what you would call that part of it, but I started by painting it black and then coming in and trying to paint the head gold, and I'm like, that is not going to work. What I need to do is paint it black first, because of course black is a great base for metallics. So I end up coming back in. I'm trying to make sure that the edges are covered as well. I will say that before I painted everything with gesso, anything that I cut on the laser cutter, I did wipe down with a paper towel, because you do get a bit of charring where the laser burns the chipboard. So I do recommend doing that. Otherwise, especially if you're painting white, because that charring might get mixed in with your white paint or your white gesso. Okay, so I then come in, and y'all, I was so meticulous. I really should have stopped, dried this, come back. See, I'm going to zoom in so you can get a better look at, I did dry it a little bit. Okay. So I'll get a good look at that. But so I'm just putting several layers of this gold down on top of that black, and it gets the most remarkable shine. I was so happy with it. If you're interested, this is Deco cream, Delta cream coat. And it's one of their golds. It's like 24 karat or 14 karat or something like that. Now I need to paint the stem, but I didn't want it to be overly painted, so I'm using the other end of that cosmetic sponge and more of that sea glass paint to just dab on there, so some of that black kind of peeks through. And I thought that was pretty awesome. So I'm putting the what is that? That's the 0.010 clear Dura-Lar. It's the thicker of the clear Dura-Lars that are in the journal. And that is going to be what I'm going to attach my spinner to. So I'm going to put my spinner down, and I immediately realize I'm not sure where the center is supposed to be. So y'all, I have this great little frame that I created that I know that's this, well, I don't know that's the exact center, but it's at least more center than anything else. And I'm taking my Sharpie marker, just a fine point Sharpie, to mark that center spot, pull everything off to the side, and then I'm going to go grab I start trying to keep the page in. I was like, well, I pull the page out, and I'm like, well, that's silly. That's what this is for. It's easy enough to pull these pages in and out. So I will, yeah, I think I'm going to pop the page out. Yeah, because it was just easier for me to see it. So there's the dot, and that tiny little dot I was trying to find. I'm using my crocodile at the 1/8 hole, so the smaller of the two holes that are on a crocodile. And then I get my little drawer full of brads out and pick out one that, yeah, I think will work, especially with that smaller one. So this is a smaller brad for the smaller hole, and when I designed that spinner, I kind of tested out different hole sizes to see which one, those smaller brads would fit in. So it did take a bit of fiddling to get this brad loose enough that my spinner will spin. In fact, I even grab a key card to bend the brad over so there's a little bit of space between the brad and the Dura-Lar, and I finally got it. There was a little more fiddling after that, but it spins just fine now, because I did try several things previous to doing this to make sure I could create a spinner. So y'all saw that spins. I think the more I play with it, the better it'll get. So from there, I'm turning it to these other two pieces, which are the Wet Media Dura-Lar and the Dura-Bright, Dura-Lar White. Yes, is that what it is? Now, I wanted to make it easy to get things in and out of the pocket, so I was going to punch just a semicircle hole in there. And y'all, I found that Wet Media Dura-Lar is stronger than I thought it was going to be. I think it would have been better if maybe I had had a better hold on this, flipped it over instead of holding it up the way I was holding it. But once I had the marking of it on there from trying to press it, I could easily come in with my scissors and cut that little circle. So you could cut whatever shape you wanted with scissors. I probably should have tested that. I probably should have tested the Wet Media Dura-Lar with the paper punch before I did it, but all is well. So from there, I want to make my pocket. So I'm going to do that by stitching these together. Now I did put some thread onto a needle, and I'm going to speed this up real fast. So I'm leaving a tail end. I'm going to make a double knot right here in that first one, and then just do, I think it's a whip stitch. I always forget. Just a simple stitch going from the back to the front over and over again. So I'm going to speed this up really fast, but let you see all of it while I tell you that, again, if you don't have a laser cutter, you could easily sew through these with your sewing machine, or punch these holes with a small hole punch or something like that to stitch it. You could use other media. You could use some of the double tack mounting tape from Dura-Lar to stick those two pages together and leave that top open. I just kind of wanted to add a little bit of extra texture here, a little bit of pop of something, and it also allowed me to test these materials on the laser cutter to see how they did, how exact it was, and I really enjoy playing with my laser cutter, so that's why I did that. So we're getting to where I am stitching this up to the end. And this whole time I'm like, oh, what am I going to do when I get to the end? And you'll see, I'm just going to tie it off pretty easily. And if it does come undone, it's fine. You see how easy that has worked itself together. I think I could easily pull all of that thread out if I wanted to. No big deal. So here's that last hole. I'm going to leave a loop there and pull my needle through it. I'm going to do it one more time just to make it super secure, like that. And then I will trim it. And the next thing I need to do is put something in my pocket. So I took a jelly print that I have had around for ages that I thought was really pretty, especially with my cover. And you saw I'm not doing anything fancy. You could make this as fancy as you wanted to the whole page. I could have done something on the edges, but for me, it was more about what was showing through that hole and not what the edges look like. Look how pretty that is with all those different colors and that kind of neutrally color. Anyway, I used the hole in the front as my template, made a circle there, and then I'm taking a ruler and going to divide my circle up. So I'm going to draw some straight lines on here. I'm going to draw 3 of them because I want 6 little pie shapes. Now, I could have pulled out some geometry or something and figured this out better. These are going to be super wonky. I don't care. The arrow still points in these, and it's fine. I'm not going to get super fussy about it. So I have that all cut, and off camera I typed up some little words that I thought would be fun little things to get me inspired to create in my journal. Things like lyric, or what did I put on there? Color, and oh, I don't have it in front of me, but I put down some inspiring little phrases on there, and I'm going to ink the edges and glue them down. And I also did 2 other sheets that were off camera, and one of them I did on some scrapbook paper, and it has things like yes, no, definitely, maybe, ask again later, like a magic 8-ball would have. And then I did another one that's pretty much like a color wheel. So it's got different colors on it and typed up. So I typed all of them and stuck them down in this same manner. And when I'm having a tough time making decisions about what to create, or just to make a decision, I can go to this little journal and spin my little spinner, and it decides for me. So these fit perfectly in this little pocket. You see, here's my other 2. And that other one, the color wheel one, is just on some cardstock. No biggie. All right, so I did leave a tail when I tied my double knot. So I grabbed a couple of larger whole beads that I can just slip on to this embroidery floss, and I'm going to do a surgeon's knot. Surgeon knot, usually you go through 1-2 times. I'm going to go through 3 times, and then pull it tight and trim it. And once that is done, I have a fun little inspiration spinner journal that I can use whenever I feel like I need to get inspired. Whether I'm working in this journal or not, I can still turn back to this journal and spin it and go work in one of my other ones. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. Make sure you check out Grafix.com and all of their fun films and materials. And I will see y'all later with more crafts from me. Thanks for watching. Bye.